Alright everybody, in today's video we will be talking about Namor the Submariner. We're going to give some background, who he is, powers, some stories that he's been involved in, and how I think he will be introduced in the MCU in phase 4/5. I believe he'll be introduced in Black Panther 2. I don't know if that's phase 4 or 5. They're kind of being iffy about it, saying where it takes place, but I believe where he should be introduced and where he will be introduced, and so let's talk about him today. Namor. So he's Marvel's Aquaman, but he actually debuted in 1939, which is also known as the Golden Age of comic books, but that was ahead of Aquaman's debut, which was in 1941. So first, before Aquaman, so that's just a cool little fact. He is technically a mutant. His dad was a sea captain. His mom was a princess of Atlantis. So he's a hybrid between human and Atlantean, which makes him a mutant. Sometimes they call him the first mutant, even though we know people like Apocalypse, Wolverine have existed before him. But in terms of publication, he was the first mutant. Some of his powers and abilities: he has super strength. His aquatic abilities are what you would assume from like underwater creatures and mythology and stories and whatnot. His swimming speed is like 3 to 4 times faster than like a normal Atlantean. And a big thing is he can fly. Yeah, it's weird. It's not exactly explained. They try looking into it in one comic line, seeing if it's part of his Atlantean side or his human side, and it literally just ends with being like, we don't know, but he can fly. So he's currently an anti-hero in the comics. He has been like that for some time now, but he was originally a good guy. We'll talk about it. Events kind of make him to this anti-hero / sometimes villainous character. And it's always because he's trying to seek vengeance for Atlantis because of some surface dwellers and what they did, and we'll get to that. Some more things about him. He's widely known as the first anti-hero in comics in general, because his debut's in 39 and anti-heroes weren't really a thing. You're a hero or a villain. And because he ends up in this gray zone eventually, he's known as that across all comics. So that's kind of a cool little fact. He has served with the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the Invaders, which sounds bad but is actually a good team. It was during World War II. He's been a part of the Defenders a lot, and the X-Men, and the Illuminati. No, not our Illuminati, the Marvel Illuminati. Marvel Illuminati, basically like it's 6 dudes. It's typically like Tony, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt from the Inhuman royal family, Namor, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. They're the people who are always secretly running the show. Like I said, the Invaders were a team that was, formed around World War II, and they were fighting the Nazis. The members were Cap, Bucky, the original Human Torch, Toro, who was the Human Torch's sidekick, and Namor. And you're like, what? The original Human Torch? There's more than one. So yeah, this is kind of an obscure thing, but the original Human Torch his name was Jim Hammond. He was actually an android created by the scientist Phineas Horton, and he can surround himself with fire and control flames, kind of like the current Human Torch can. In his earliest portrayals, he was kind of seen as like a monster, kind of like Frankenstein in a way, but then he quickly became a hero, and so he adopted a police officer as a secret identity in New York City. In the 1950s, a lot of comic characters kind of started disappearing. This is after your golden age of comics. And so in the 60s, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were making a comeback, and so they repurposed the Human Torch's powers and his name for a new character, Johnny Storm, who's one we all know. Namor also took a break in the comics, and he returned in Fantastic Four 4 in May of 1962. The new Human Torch, Johnny Storm, discovers Namor as a homeless man with amnesia in New York City, and so Johnny ends up helping him recover his memory, and then Namor immediately returns to Atlantis to find that it's been destroyed by nuclear testing, and assumes his people are dead or scattered, and he'll most likely never see him again. This is the event that sort of turns him into an anti-hero. The 2 things that are driving him is his thirst for vengeance and his quest for identity. This is around the time he becomes a villain, and he fights against the humans who destroyed his home, which is justified, but he also shows a great deal of respect and nobility towards individuals, and he has this real noble characteristic about him. During this time too, being a bit more villainous, he finds himself allies with Doctor Doom and Magneto. It's weird, even if like Namor is good, sometimes he'll go to Doom and they'll help each other out. He'll do something bad for him. They'll use each other in different ways. So that's kind of a dynamic that'd be cool to see play out eventually on the screen. But his nobility and his independent nature are what kind of made his alliances with Magneto and Doom end so quickly. And then from now on, from the 60s to present, he's made appearances in miniseries, including Daredevil, Defenders, Doctor Strange, Avengers, etc. And in 1974, so Marvel and DC have done many cross comics together, where they like have like Superman and Iron Man hanging out, or Batman and and Daredevil. That's a great storyline. And so there's a lot of those that happened back in the day. 1974, you had Aquaman and Namor being together. And in that crossover, it was called Tales of Atlantis. I don't think that will ever happen, but it's just a cool thing to know. It's a cool thing to read too if you want to go read it. The Batman Daredevil one is one of my favorites. Batman and Turtles are pretty good. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not Turtles. The Batman and Daredevil one's really cool. It's interesting. So like Batman knows Matt Murdock is Daredevil, and he knows that he's blind because when Batman speaks, he notices how Matt Murdock's ears are moving. And then they end up fighting like in an alley at one point or something. And he tells him his identity, and then Matt Murdock also knows that Bruce Wayne's Batman, and Batman's like, wait, how'd you know? And he's like, well, your heart rate is the same steady pace as the individual Bruce Wayne who was at the party that I just met, and no one has ever had a heart rate like that. Like, you're not nervous right now in this fight. You were so calm and cool and collected. It's a great comic line. Go read it. Again, definitely would not happen on screen, but it is a cool comic line. Some more background. So he was born in 1915 in Atlantis when it was located off the Antarctic coast. And I say that because later on they moved Atlantis to somewhere else. The place they relocated to was somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know if it says specifically where. It's also been destroyed several times in the comics and came back, but what is it, He had a love relationship with Sandy Pierce, the daughter of businessman Henry Pierce. Is there a connection to Alexander Pierce from The Winter Soldier? That could be something to play out if he ever shows up in these movies. And then, maybe with that, S.H.I.E.L.D. has known about Namor and the Atlanteans this whole time, but I've just been happy they've been keeping at bay. Because technically, the Inhumans are still around, right? There are people living on the moon in the Marvel Universe. Again, they can be hidden. He doesn't have to be from another reality. He just not shown up. So, in 1934, when he was a part of the Invaders, remember, good guys, they went to Wakanda and they met T'Chaka, who was the Black Panther at the time, and the King of Wakanda, as we know, is the father of T'Challa. Namor actually found a sort of companionship with T'Challa, and they went on many adventures together, helping one another out. A pair of kings working together, tracking down enemies and missing subjects, and helping one another's kingdoms. First of all, a pair of kings is what Black Panther 2 absolutely has to be called. So you see a really cool relationship. Maybe they fight for a bit, and then they're mates, and they help each other out. That's something that would be really interesting. I think he'll show up in Black Panther 2 because in Avengers Endgame, Okoye says something along the lines of how there's like an earthquake underwater off the coast of this nation. Black Widow's like, what are we going to do about it? She's like, nothing. It's an earthquake. We can't do anything about it. So what if that earthquake underwater was caused by Namor because he's awakened or something along those lines, and then you have him in Black Panther 2 and yada, yada, yada. I think it'd be really cool. Okay, after some background. So I told you guys how he lost his memory. So once he regains them, he's approached by Charles Xavier, and they work together to seek other mutants like Namor. But these adventures end up causing Namor some PTSD and emotional imbalance from World War II. And so Charles tries to help him, but makes things worse per usual. And I'm just looking at like the Dark Phoenix storylines or anything else where Charles always tries to help with mind stuff. And so after what Charles had done, Namor becomes more delusional and keeps seeing his friends from the war dying over and over again. And ever since then, he's been bipolar. In 2011, he joins the X-Men and helps them in the Curse of the Mutants. Now, this storyline is kind of crazy. It may deserve its own video, but some brief overview. In the storyline, a bomb goes off in San Francisco Union Square, which covers dozens of humans and vampire converting blood. And the X-Men have to then track down Dracula's son, Zarus, who is now the Lord of the Vampires. And the X-Men end up getting Blade to help them do this. This storyline, it should really happen in the MCU because we know Blade's showing up, right? We know X-Men are going to show up eventually. We know Blade has connections with Black Knight because of Dracula. You have all these major characters we've been talking about over the past few videos, and they can all show up in this crazy crossover movie where people are being turned into vampires. That would be just an incredible thing to see. So the MCU is going to get real weird real soon. But we know as soon as Guardians of the Galaxy was introduced, it was getting weird. And I kind of hope it keeps going towards this direction. So, like I said, Namor has joined the X-Men more than the Avengers. He's a part of both teams, but like Wolverine is. But he is on the X-Men more because, again, he feels sympathy towards them. He takes their side when the X-Men versus Avengers storyline happens. During that storyline as well, which again is a pretty big storyline, maybe its own future video, or maybe just sprinkled in through a bunch of videos. But in the storyline, the Phoenix Force plays a role, and he becomes one of the Phoenix Five when the Phoenix Force is fractured between himself, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, and Magic. While he's one of the Phoenix Five, he goes and attacks Wakanda, and a bunch of the Avengers attack him, and he's the first of the Phoenix Five to fall. He regains his memory and rejoins the Illuminati to help him with the fight. But then they talk about destroying another Earth to save their own because the other Earth is about to collide with theirs. None of the Illuminati members can I can't destroy billions of people. So he's like, I'll do it. I don't really care. He takes like an antimatter device and he's going to be the one to do it. But then when that's happening, another antimatter device happens. Like the two go off at once because he was going to basically also have to sacrifice himself because it was like hand activated, I believe. And so him and his cabal end up going to go do it. But then the two go off at once. He ends up going to Earth 3, a third Earth. So he ends up escaping and not dying. And that leads into another storyline of something else. Black Bolt is a part of this as well. As we know, like I said, humans are very heavily involved in the Marvel storyline. So I really hope they're brought into the MCU officially, right? Not through the TV show, but like they initially planned the movie, because there's so much you can do with Inhumans and you need to do it. In this storyline as well, I don't remember who it was, but like they were mad that, Namor went and destroyed another Earth, even though it was the only way to save their own. So they go destroy Atlantis. Like I said, it gets destroyed often. So Namor has had run-ins with Cap, Winter Soldier, Hydra. There was actually a story where he tells the Cosmic Cube shard in Atlantis at one. The Cosmic Cube, as we know, is the Tesseract in MCU, which holds Space Stone. He has run-ins with Silver Surfer, Strange, Hulk, basically everyone. Because he's such an old Marvel character, there's so much opportunity here because he shows up in so many different storylines. Something kind of cool about him is that Marvel never changed his age. So, like, we know Iron Man and Hulk, Spider-Man, some of these characters are really old. They're from, the 50s, 60s, and whatnot. Besides Cap, who went into the ice, every other character, their age just gets redone and constantly over and over and over again. Even DC does that with, like, Superman and Batman. What's cool about Namor is they never changed his age. So now in the comics, they're like, yeah, Namor's 100 years old, and he ages differently. He looks like a man at his peak, but he's clearly over 100. So that's pretty cool, and they keep all of his memories, his flashbacks in World War II and all that different things. So if you do introduce him in MCU, you could say that he was in World War II with Cap. You could have a cameo with Chris Evans and just be like, yeah, no, he was there fighting with Cap during World War II, and that causes all these backstories and PTSD, the memory loss, etc. There's a storyline as well where he's tested by the Skrulls. We could say the Skrulls have actually been on Earth for hundreds of years, so maybe after World War II, they capture him, they test on him, they take his memories, and then he forgets for a while, and then maybe his memories are reintroduced some way, or put him like asleep in kind of a stasis, and that earthquake was him reawakening underwater. There's many things you can do with this, but the fact that in the comics they still say he's old, they should definitely apply that in MCU. Just say he's been here. You can have a few mutants like that have existed this entire time and just have not been a part of certain things. So him, the Inhumans, you could maybe throw in Logan in that mix. You don't have to have Logan be from another reality because he's so old and beat. Sometimes he doesn't fight because he just literally doesn't want to. That can be something. If you can't say that with Charles, right? If you had Charles around, Charles would be doing things. But if you had Logan around, you could totally do that as well. And so this is kind of interesting. There's one comic at one point they say how like regular immersion in water, so him constantly going back into the ocean, can help with his mood swings and his PTSD. If you want to be cruel, you could have a storyline with him. He's kind of going crazy because he has been trapped on land or in a room for so long, he starts losing his shit. So that'd be kind of interesting to see him go through that PTSD and regain his grip on reality and whatnot. And there's in the comics, he actually was also entrusted with the time gem at one point. Again, if he's been around this entire time, you can have a flashback in the MCU that he gives the time gem to the Ancient. When he loses his memory, he gives it to her and be like, I don't know what this is, but I know I should give it to you. Or something along those lines. That'd be kind of cool to see. When he was a part of the Illuminati, he was also entrusted with the power gem because the Illuminati all split the gems between one another. So he's got strong over publications. There are storylines that show Namor being strong enough to single-handedly beat the new Avengers. He can easily outmatch the strength of Thor, Iron Man, and take direct cosmic energy blasts from Captain Marvel and be fine and just walk it off. He has also been shown to take gamma ray blasts from She-Hulk with ease and has even been run over by Hell Charger, which is Ghost Rider's car, and recovered instantly. He's very, very strong now and very durable. So that'd be a cool character to introduce, especially one that his tendencies switch depending on what he wants to do because he's an anti-hero. Along with his current abilities, he has the power over water itself. So his hydrokinesis is so good that he once flooded a prison cell of Roxxon enforcers. We've seen Roxxon so far already. That even though it was miles away from the ocean, he did it with the sewage water. Gross, right? But also from a distance, which is kind of incredible. So imagine like he has the powers of Hydro Man as well. He also has the Trident of Neptune, and as the Trident was constructed by and for the Olympian pantheon, it is composed of this indestructible metal that used to belong to the gods. And remember, the Greek pantheon are extra dimensional beings. We mentioned that in the Eternals video. So because they bring this indestructible metal, it is so strong that they've been shown that battles with multiple enforcers of the Thor Corps and their legion of Mjolnir hammers, the Greek pantheon weapons versus the Thor Corps and their entire legion of Mjolnir hammers, the Mjolnir hammers get destroyed. The Greek pantheon weapons are completely fine. So the fact that he has a weapon from the Olympian pantheon composed of this indestructible metal is pretty big. Along with his current abilities, he also has that. It's kind of insane. It's kind of like Thor, right? Thor is super powerful on his own, and then he has a hammer, right? Or Stormbreaker now in this case. The question now is, how will he show up in the MCU, and why I think he'll show up in Black Panther too? Like I said, he has this relationship with Black Panther. In Avengers Endgame, Okoye says how there's been an underwater earthquake. This can be caused by him, again, awakening or something. Like I said, he was tested by the Skrulls at one point. You can introduce him that way. Several ways to do it. With his connections with Wakanda, I feel like that's such a great introduction. And call the movie A Pair of Kings. What a great title. Free on me, Marvel. Actually, give me a little and I'll be happy. So, yeah, I think it'd be awesome if he shows up in Black Panther 2. You can have stuff with the Skrulls as well, him awakening. There's so much to do here. He's a very cool character because he's a villain, he's a hero, and he goes back and forth. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have any comments? Let me know. Let's get discussion going. Like the video, subscribe. It helps the channel, it helps me making videos. And yeah, you guys have a great day.